Move me up, stand for the chair.
Good evening, everyone. Please sit down. That's what my glasses are. All right. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Linda Bell, Muriel Green, Anthony McMullen, Rebecca O'Keefe, Paul Richardson, Erin Parker, Leonard. Are there any other apologies? No?
Chair, Councillor Linda Ockley may be late to the meeting.
Thank you. Item 2. Councillor Wallace, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Councillor McIntyre will be late, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all you put. Item 2, declarations of interest and dispensations. The monitoring officer has written to all members to set out the position with regards to interests in meetings of the council that deal with the budget proposals. In relation to a registrable personal interest held, where a member has been appointed by the authority to an outside body or bodies, dispensations have been granted to allow them to participate and vote at any meetings in relation to that registrable personal interest and their membership of that body. Where members have been granted such dispensations, they are not required to declare these registrable personal interests or the grant of dispensations at this meeting. A list of the appointments to the authority's outside bodies and dispensations granted to members in respect of these appointments has been sent to all members. Do members have any other interests to declare at the meeting? I'll start at the back. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. My wife works for North Tyneside Council.
Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. I work for Tynemere Fire and Rescue Service.
Thank you. Councillor Thurloway.
My dad works for North Tyneside Council, and I also work for Parkside Care, which has contracts with the council to provide adult social care.
Thank you. Councillor Frank Lott.
It's a non-registrable personal interest.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Lott.
My daughter works for the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Early.
I'm a trustee of North Tyneside Carers Centre, which receives funding from the council.
Thank you. Councillor Val Jameson.
I'm a trustee of the Walking With charity in Wallsend.
Thank you. Councillor Samuel.
Non-pecuniary interest. My wife works for the council.
Thank you. Councillor Bones.
A member of my family works for the council.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I am Director and Employee of Justice Prince Community Interest Company, which receives funds and contracts with North Tyneside Council. I will therefore withdraw from the meeting, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also an Employee and Company Director of Justice Prince Kick, who receives funding and will have contracts with North Tyneside Council, and on that basis I will also withdraw from the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Cox.
Hi, non-registrable pecuniary interest. Father receives adult social care.
Thank you. Councillor Rankin.
Chair, my wife works for North Tyneside Council.
Councillor Davis.
My daughter works for North Tyneside Council.
Councillor Madden.
Yeah, I've got a relative that works for the local authority.
Is that everyone? I also need to declare a non-registrable personal interest regarding the adult social care precept. I have my grandson receives adult social care from the council. Item 3. This. Councillor Harrison, sorry, did you?
Yes, Chair. To remain consistent, I declare that I have paid my council tax and I am eligible to take part in this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I assume everyone else is in the same position? Item 3. This meeting, Council will consider the Cabinet's proposals in relation to the General Fund budget and resulting estimates of amounts for the Council tax requirements, and an objection to the Cabinet's proposals that has been submitted by the Conservative Group. I will first of all request Councillor Rankin to move the Cabinet's proposals. Once these proposals are seconded, I will invite members to ask questions relating only to matters of principle and the Mayor's final amendments that were circulated early this week for tonight's meeting. I will then take the objection from the Conservative Group. If the objection is approved by the Council, the meeting will end and a further Council meeting will be held on the 2nd of March 2023. If the object is defeated by the Council, I will invite members to debate the Cabinet's proposals and to vote on them. I would remind members that regulations are now in force requiring local authorities to have recorded or named votes on any decision at budget meetings relating to the budget or council tax. I'll now invite Councillor Rankin to move the Cabinet's proposals. You have up to 10 minutes, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. Following the approval of Cabinet on the 6th of February, I present the 2023-24 budget proposals. Council is aware that we operate in unprecedented economic times as we deal with the global market issues such as inflation, particularly in energy costs and supply chain issues, impacted also by the war in Ukraine. Much of this was unforeseen when our current year budget was set, but the challenges this year have been significant in their financial impacts. We also know that the wider inflationary pressures have created a cost of living crisis in our communities, something these proposals will address as far as able. Our budget continues to be driven by the key priorities set out in our North Tyneside plan. A thriving, secure, family-friendly, caring and green North Tyneside, and Mayor and Cabinet have a clear, ambitious plan to maximise support for those residents who need it most, whilst continuing to invest in all areas of the borough. Investment in our town centres is ongoing, investment in roads and pavements will continue, and we will see continued investment in our approach to net zero. Our proposals also include additional funding for a further 100 affordable homes. There will be no detrimental impact on frontline services or closures to our facilities. Budget monitoring reports have highlighted the huge financial challenges facing this authority. The in-year financial position, as set out in the Cabinet report in January, shows a gross pressure of 23.5 million. Some of this pressure was foreseen and planned for when setting the 2022-23 budget. However, even with these mitigations and contingencies, along with in-year savings such as the minimum revenue provision saving of £4.9 million, the net in-year pressure for 2022-23 is forecast to be 8.6 million. This will require us to use our strategic reserve, which highlights the importance of holding prudent levels of reserves at all times. The medium-term financial plan has been updated to reflect the local government financial settlement. This settlement increases core spending power nationally by 9.2% for next year, underpinned by the government's assumption of a 4.99% increase to council tax for all local authorities. For North Tyneside, the increase in core spending power is 9.8%, an increase in cash terms of £19.7 million, but lower than the regional average and prevailing inflation rate. Should we have received an inflation match settlement, we would have another £2.5 million for this year alone. We remain 9th out of 12 North East authorities in terms of our core spending power. It is important to know that out of this £19.7 million cash increase, 35.5%, £7 million, is a direct result of the government's assumption that we will increase council tax by the maximum 4.99%. The additional resources from the settlement will allow the authority to address some in-year pressures that are already being experienced across social care. In the report, section 1.615 to 1.633, details the main areas of growth that are proposed, which would go some way to addressing the pressures that have emerged during the current year and also support us in setting a balanced budget for 2023-24. Cabinet's initial budget proposals in November identified growth across social care of £7.7 million. Considering the in-year position noted earlier, this would not be sufficient to support the current pressures which have emerged. These budget proposals therefore increase the growth assumption by a further £7.7 million, totalling £15.4 million growth within social care for 2023-24. As well as addressing the in-year gap arising from the 2022-23 pay award, these proposals increase the pay award assumption for next year to 5%, a further £5.4 million added as growth in the budget. We have also taken the additional prudent step of placing £1 million contingency to support any further increases coming through the National Pay Agreement. Council will be aware of the huge increase in energy costs due to inflation. Despite the forward purchase of energy through the NEPO framework and the in-year government support, a further £5.6 million is required to address current budget pressures that have materialised during 2022-23 and which will continue next year. Another main area of growth previously included in these budget proposals relates to contractual inflation. An increase of £3 million is required, which will ensure that specific contractual price increases can be met. No council wishes to increase council tax unless necessary, but as the report sets out, an increase of 4.99% is baked into the government's assumed increase in our core spending power. Within the settlement, the government announced an additional £100 million grant to support economically vulnerable households with council tax support payments of up to £25 for next year. Our allocation from this is £427,000, and it will be used to supplement the authority's own package of financial support, which in recent years we have funded locally at a cost of £1.5 million, which will see the continuation of the council tax hardship payments of up to £150 for those eligible residents. Our discretionary support means that over 9,300 working age residents will have support towards their council tax bills, and over 3,900 working age residents will have no council tax liability whatsoever next year. I know the council understands the position on reserves, but I want to reiterate. Much has been said about reserves that the authority holds. However, the strategic reserve, the only reserve that we hold to support risks associated with our financial planning, is projected to reduce from £12.4 million to just over £3.8 million if in-year pressures are not resolved. This £3.8 million residual balance would be way below the minimum £10 million balance required by our reserves policy. Whilst focus remains on reducing the in-year position, we must be realistic. The exceptional pressures this year will require substantial use of our strategic reserve. We cannot ignore this, nor the requirement to replenish it in the future when developing our financial plans. Council will note the medium-term financial plan includes replenishment of the strategic reserve from 2024-25 to 2026-27 of £9 million. These budget proposals do include council tax increases next year, a difficult decision, but this is absolutely in line with government expectations. These proposals present a balanced general fund position for next year. However, no single year's budget is set in isolation. Over the remainder of our 4-year plan, we currently estimate a gap of just over £35 million. Read page 34. We must adopt a sustainable approach to council finances, not just for this budget cycle, but into the future as well. I will now hand over to Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor John Harrison.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I now invite Councillor Carl.
No, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not hand over you either.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Sorry, I commend this budget to the council and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I now invite Councillor Carl Johnson to second the Cabinet's proposals. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It is important to understand the context of setting this budget in. On the back of Conservative government cuts over £127 million to this council since 2010, more recently, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak crashed and mismanaged the economy, sending inflation skyrocketing and prices for all of our services the council procures way up. All while still giving North Tyneside Council a real terms cut to funding. The Conservative government give us the lowest core spending power of any authority in the North East Local Authority 7 councils. And despite all this, Labour has delivered a budget which supports residents, improves services and invests in our borough. We're investing £6.5 million into a cost of living support package to protect those residents most in need, £1 million into a poverty intervention fund, £3 million to support council renters, £1.5 million to support those in need of council tax support, reducing the council tax bills of nearly 16,000 residents. The government wanted to give a paltry £25 to those residents most in need, £1 million for out-of-school activities for our young people. This is all on top of funding set-up costs for the bread and butter thing, funding provided to the food bank, and funding to the community and volunteer sector to assist residents during the Conservative cost of living crisis. But it's a budget which is not just reactive to the problems. We're also proactive in building, from opening the first Working Well hub in North Shields last year, which was advice on jobs and skills, and links with employers to get our residents back to work. We will open a second hub in Wallsend this year. I'm proud, despite years of Conservative cuts, that we've managed to keep all of our libraries, leisure centres and parks open and publicly run. They are a valuable service to residents, which Conservatives, the last time they ran the council, wanted to cut. We're invested in roads and pavements. The Conservative government cut the roads and pavement budget by about 50% in recent year, leaving us to pick up the pieces of their backlog. That's why we've invested an additional £2 million in roads and pavements every year since 2013 and will continue to do so till at least the end of the mayoral term. We've also listened to our residents' priorities on environment, invested an additional £500,000 into environmental services. This will see us introduce 12 new staff members to tackle litter, fly tipping, additional street sweeping, tackling weeds and additional grass cutting, as well as 100 new bins and 4 new vehicles to enable this. Action rather than words at a council meeting. The budget also continues to invest in regeneration, with funding for North Shields, Wallsend and North West Master Plan, continue to ensure our outstanding children's services, youth justice services, schools and adult social care teams can continue to operate and improve. This is a budget which protects residents from the Conservative cost of living crisis, improves services and invests in our residents' priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Before I invite members to ask any questions on the Cabinet proposals, can I remind you that they've already had the opportunity to raise questions of a technical nature with the officers in advance of this meeting. Can I therefore remind you that questions should relate to matters of principle and repetitious questions should be avoided. Would anyone like to ask any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday on Facebook, the Mayor was referring to school meals vouchers within Labour's cost of living support package. I just wonder if the Cabinet member could point me to anywhere in the report it refers to school meals vouchers.
School meal vouchers are provided through the Poverty Intervention Fund and have been for a period of time now. So we don't need to mention it within the report, because as long as the funding is there, if there's a requirement for those school meal vouchers, then we will provide them.
So can the Cabinet member confirm that the school meals vouchers come from the Poverty Intervention Fund, which is also included within the objection?
School meal vouchers come from a variety of sources, Chair. There's funding from the Poverty Intervention Fund and other sources as well. It's various sources from the council it's funded from, but absolutely some of the school meal vouchers are funded from the Poverty Intervention Fund.
Are there any further questions?
Thank you. Despite not having the level of access, obviously, that the Labour group have, the Conservative notice of objection has managed to find a number of areas of savings and efficiency, both amongst us as councillors and within various departments. Can I just ask what efforts were made to find efficiencies within the council when preparing the budget, both amongst the Cabinet and council members and within departments, and why none were found? Thank you.
I'm really quite surprised we're getting that question, Councillor Bartoli, given the efficiency savings that this council has delivered since 2010. Every single year, the council has been very successful in delivering balanced budgets, other than this year, when your government absolutely blew up the economy with Liz Truss's mini budget that wasn't a budget, which I believe you all supported at the time. I think former Councillor Brockbank still does, because he resigned when she wasn't Prime Minister anymore. So, yeah, I think from the point of view of the professionalism of officers, the professionalism of officers in
just a minute.
constant... Yeah, let us speak. I'm still giving an answer.
But I've raised a point of order, Chair.
Sorry?
I've raised a point of order.
I'm going to continue my response if you don't mind, Chair. The professionalism
Yes,
of officers in constantly monitoring budgets to deliver best value and value for money for residents of North Tyneside is exceptional.
Chair, you're under the procedures. You're meant to listen to my point of order, Chair.
Councillor Bartoli, you can speak now.
Thank you, Chair. I've asked a very simple question about efficiency savings, and Councillor Rankin has gone into an attack that not only includes us, but also members that are no longer present, which I think is entirely inappropriate. And I think you should at least to make some effort to answer the question.
Yeah, that's not a point of order.
Councillor Rankin, would you like to respond?
Yeah, that's not a point of order, and I was answering the question, and it was a statement of political fact that your former leader resigned from the candidacy of St Mary's Ward.
I think he's not here to defend himself. I'm not sure it's appropriate to be talking about members of the public in that way.
Something that was reported in the media.
I'm not having this across the chamber from either of you. When someone's speaking, you don't interrupt, Councillor Bartoli. Put your hand up.
Is it just me that's not allowed to interrupt?
That's the order of procedure at the council meeting.
Is it just
point of order, Chair?
You will be invited to speak after the other person has finished.
Point of order, Chair. Points of order are taken immediately as per the rules. And Councillor Bartoli was raising a point of order specifically relating to the Constitution, and the member answering the relevant question. Councillor Rankin is breaking the code of conduct by failing to show members of the public respect in his answer.
Point of order has to relate to the question.
And sorry, Chair. Further to that point of order, Councillor Rankin, by attacking a member of the public who is not here to defend himself, is breaching the code of conduct by failing to show members of the public respect.
Mr. Barton, would you
Can I just make it clear to members the points of order relate to the procedure, the council procedure, and if you raise a point of order, you're supposed to indicate which part of the Constitution, the rules of procedure, you think are not being adhered to.
Is that clear to everyone? Councillor Rankin, had you finished?
I had finished, yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Does anyone else want to ask any questions? Mr. Scargill.
Thank you, Chair. It'll be an easy one. My question is, does the Cabinet member think it is a good use of council tax to take the mayor in a chauffeur-driven car to a ukulele festival? I just want a yes or no if you think it is a good use of council tax to take a chauffeur-driven car to a ukulele festival. Thank you.
Repetition, Chair.
Perhaps. Are there any further questions? No? I'm assuming there are no more questions. I now invite Councillor Liam Bones to move the Conservative group's objections. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. The budget objection set out by the Conservative group offers a choice. Deliver better services for less. Reduce council tax, invest in our roads, pavements and tackle antisocial behaviour, including litter. Or continue with yet more of Labour's maximum increase and worsening services policy. Councillor Johnson just spoke of action, not words, at council meetings. If he supports our budget, then there will be action on residents' priorities. This mayor is overseeing the worst financial mismanagement of this council since her party last tried to bankrupt us in the early 2000s. This objection puts a stop to the endless council tax hikes and vanity projects and brings the focus of the authority back to basics, delivering brilliant public services for our residents for less. Crime and antisocial behaviour are blighting communities across our borough, but the Mayor and Kim McGuinness have taken little to no action. In fact, the Police and Crime Commissioner won't even meet with councillors to listen to the problems, never mind try and solve them. Our budget would see 10 new community wardens to tackle the problem across North Tyneside. There is also provision to tackle these issues on the metro system at the coast, which is why we've set aside a £100,000 fund to negotiate an agreement with Nexus to have ticket barriers installed and manned at peak times at Tynemouth and Cullercoat stations. This is something the Mayor supported in this chamber last year, and it's a shame that within her budget she has not put her money where her mouth is. Our plan also includes a clear strategy to tackle litter across North Tyneside. I'm glad that the Mayor has seen sense and now agreed to the 100 additional bins which Councillor Graham was telling us just 3 weeks ago were unaffordable. It's clear that the litter problem has become so bad that even the Mayor can see it from her chauffeur-driven car. Residents often complain to us that the trees across North Tyneside are not maintained in the way that we would expect, and it's as is so often the case with this Labour Council. Our budget gives the arborist team the capacity to do just that, increasing the capacity of the core team with 3 new staff members to create a 3rd permanent arbour team. Under the Conservatives, residents can rest assured trees would be properly maintained. Now, fixing our roads and pavements is a top priority for residents. After a decade of neglect by this Labour administration, residents complain that it's more common to see a broken pavement than a flat one. In her budget, the Mayor has frozen investment in roads and pavements. So is it any wonder that our roads are getting worse? That chauffeur-driven car must have some good suspension, that's for sure. Before I conclude, I want to touch on the borrowing position within our objection. A Labour proposal will borrow £12.5 million on behalf of a trading company. The Council will not profit from the borrowing, and at a time where interest rates are unusually high and the housing market is readjusting, it seems like a big risk for the authority to take. Our budget would therefore remove this borrowing on behalf of the trading company, borrowing less than the Labour administration is, and instead see borrowing focused on residents' priorities like fixing our roads and pavements. It's worth noting that the investment of £6.5 million in roads and pavements set out in our objection is, in the officers' views, the maximum level that we could spend within 1 year on roads and pavements, and it's a miss to me why the Mayor and Cabinet wouldn't always aim to do the most they absolutely could when our roads and pavements are in the state that they're in. This Conservative budget delivers better services for less, with a lower rate of council tax than Labour, with less borrowing than Labour, and with enhanced public services to tackle the issues that residents care about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Do you have a seconder?
Yeah, second and reserve the right to speak. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Scargill. You have up to 5 minutes. Now invite members to ask questions on the objection. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Item 1 in your budget, Councillor Bones, reduced council tax increased by £400,000. Can you confirm what percentage increase that would leave put the council tax at?
Chair, I believe that's a technical question.
That's not a technical question, Chair.
Is it? That is not a technical question.
It's a question related to the figures in here, Chair.
I have been advised by officers that that's
Councillor Bones?
not a technical question.
If you don't know the answer and you don't know your own figures, Councillor Bones, you can say that, you know.
I'm aware of the answer, Chair, but it's the principle. I'm not answering technical questions, and the percentage of the percentage increase.
Are you going to argue with council officers who have years of experience?
Sorry, Chair.
I've been advised that that's not a technical question. Continue, Councillor Johnson.
Chair, beyond that, then I did in advance speak to the Section 151 officer because I knew Councillor Bones wouldn't answer any proper questions tonight in advance. So I will ask the Section 151 officer to circulate a note to our members stating that the Conservative group wish to increase council tax by about 4.6%, which equates on average to a 12 pence a week decrease in council tax for members of the authority, Chair, for residents in this borough. I've got some more questions, that's all right, Chair. Councillor Bones, in your savings requirement, you say maintain the authority's council tax harvester support at the current level up to £150 per eligible household. That figure equates to £362,000 coming out of your budget. Where are you taking that from, Councillor Bones?
Chair, the budget savings set out within our objection match to the penny the Cabinet proposals which were set out in December for both council tax support and for support around the Poverty Intervention Fund.
Councillor Bones, £362,000 just doesn't disappear out of thin air. It has to come from some item of budget in the council. So can you tell me again where that £362,000 is coming from? I have already asked the Section 151 officer in advance, and I can make a statement in advance, but if Councillor Bones doesn't want to tell me, I will make that, Chair. That's all right.
I can absolutely tell Councillor Johnson where that money comes from. So the government has, as is often the case in these things, the government has given a significant chunk of money to the local authority in order to reduce council tax and deliver local council tax support. That money, the Mayor has done exactly the same thing with this money. So the money that was set aside for council tax support within the December budget has then had the government money added to it, and then the money, the difference effectively taken out of it and applied wherever groups see fit. And as you can see from our budget, Chair, where we've seen fit is to deliver better public services for less.
Thank you, Chair. That's not correct, Chair. I will ask the Section 151 officer to circulate a technical note to the authority. That's £362,000. Councillor Bones is correct. It is replacing money that the government put in. But what the Labour Group's budget does that is put into the Poverty Intervention Fund. So what your budget is doing is taking £362,000 from the Poverty Intervention Fund, and the Section 151 officer will circulate a technical note on that nature, Chair. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Chair,
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Excuse me, Chair, that was Councillor Johnson asking a question. Therefore, I get...
No.
Well, he can't make a speech.
Councillor Rankin, did you have your hand up to ask a question?
Yes, Chair. I would like to know.
Point of order, Chair. Under the rules of procedure for budget meetings, Councillor Johnson has just made a speech, and I've not been given the right to reply.
It was a point of clarification on your non-answer, Councillor Bones, which is in the Constitution as per the rules.
I have a question, Chair.
Councillor Bones, you can reply at the end.
I have a question for Councillor Bones. So he seems to be representing, obviously, Councillor Walton not being here tonight yet. Under Labour's budget proposals for council tax and under your counter proposals for council tax increases, how much will a Band D family save per week under your proposals in pounds?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, as Councillor Rankin will see within the budget papers, there is a £400,000 reduction in the council tax level, and this is really symbolic of our approach. If I could just go into it for 2 seconds. So,
point of order, Chair. Councillor Bones isn't answering the question. I've asked you how much difference.
I do actually think he's trying to get there.
Under our budget, unlike the Labour Party opposite, who every year that they have been in power have increased council tax by the maximum level necessary, regardless of what the resources of the council required, our budget clearly sets out that we would take a pragmatic view, looking at what we need to deliver in terms of services and how we can do that by charging residents only what is absolutely necessary, rather than automatically, almost instinctively, going for the absolute maximum council increase, as this Mayor and Cabinet does. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, I have further questions on that point because he hasn't given us the answer. Is Councillor Bones aware that under his proposals, the Band D, which is what we calculate everything based on, that the family living in Band D property under your council tax proposals, where you have said in your notice of objection that you're going to ease the council tax burden on families across North Tyneside, and you've just made a public statement which said put a stop to endless council tax hikes. Are you aware that the average Band D family is going to save 12 pence per week under your proposals?
Yes, Chair, and what you would also find within our budget is that the average family in North Tyneside will not only be paying less council tax than they would under this Mayor, but they will also be receiving protection from 10 new community wardens, receiving 100 new bins, getting more funding for micro barriers. Excuse me, Chair, I'm answering the question.
That is not part of this question.
Sorry, Chair, I'm entitled to answer the question.
As a point of clarification, I didn't hear him say yes to the fact that he knows that the difference is 12 pence per week. Could you just answer that with a simple yes or no, please, if you don't mind, Councillor Bones?
Chair, under our budget, residents across North Tyneside will be getting a lower council tax bill. Residents will be getting increased capacity in the arborist team. They will be getting protection from a new antisocial behaviour team. They will also see the mayor...
You're not answering the question.
I am answering the question, Chair. Councillor Rankin... Excuse me, Chair, I'm trying to talk. And it seems to be only me who can't answer a question in full in this chamber, Chair.
I have a further question for Councillor Bones. Thank you, Chair. Is he aware that the £400,000 that you are actually sort of taking out of the budget and council tax is coming directly from a poverty intervention fund? And so where you are going to give everyone in North Tyneside, because it works on Band D, you're going to give them a 12p decrease per week. But obviously if it's Band D or Band B, then you're looking at about 5p per week. So it's going to take someone living in a Band A or Band B property, it's going to take them 6 weeks just to save up the 30p that your current deputy chair of the party, Lee Anderson MP, says is enough for a wholesome meal, 30p. So are you aware that that is what it is? And are you aware that you're taking money that would be directly used through the Poverty Intervention Fund for those most in need on a means-tested basis, and it's 12p a week that you are proposing saving? That is not putting an end to endless
Chair, is there a
tax
question
rise,
here?
which is what you've said.
Now, will you answer the question, please, Councillor Bones?
Thank you. I'll absolutely answer the question, Chair. As I said earlier, our budget includes all of the same local council tax support as the Labour budget, and under our budget, residents will be receiving better services for less money. I think what Councillor Rankin, when he gets on his high horse about the cost of living, fails to appreciate is he is parroting the Kremlin's line on this. He is parroting... He is blaming the entire global inflationary crisis on a budget...
Point of order, Chair, he's not answering the question.
He is blaming the entire global inflationary crisis on a budget which was set in the United Kingdom with no mention of Putin's war in Ukraine, and that is exactly what the Kremlin want to see. I think what Councillor Rankin needs to come back to is...
Are we actually... Can you get to the point?
What Councillor Rankin needs to come back to is he may think that a saving of £8 is not significant, and for him, a banker from Sarimoa, it may not be significant, but for residents across North Tyneside, less council tax coming out of their bank account is more important every month than the mayor having a chauffeur-driven car. Thank you, Chair.
12p a week, Chair. Thank you.
Mr Johnson, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you, Chair. Is Councillor Bones aware that despite his criticism of council services and the incoming, no doubt, criticism of the Labour budget, that he agrees with 98% of our budget?
Absolutely, Chair. And as many members of my group will make clear, there are some good things in this budget. But what we're asking for within this budget is for the Labour Party to get rid of some of their own luxuries in favour of making resident services better. I mean, you know, the Mayor's finally seen sense on the 100 new bins, which, as I said earlier, 3 weeks ago we were told were unaffordable. You know, the Mayor voted for ticket barriers at Tynemouth and metro stations, but hasn't managed to find the money to fund them. But she can fund thousands in expenses for her own Labour group. You know, a chauffeur-driven car, trade union facility time, and, you know, millions of pounds on bringing forward a net zero target 20 years earlier than the government asked.
Are there any other questions? No? I now invite members to speak on the objection. You have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking to support the Conservative objection, which proposes £100,000 financial assistance to Nexus for installing of barriers at colour codes and Tynemouth Station, in addition to manning these stations at critical times when incidents of antisocial behaviour have been identified. and likely to occur. Antisocial behaviour is a serious problem at the coast, when often large numbers of drunken youth travel down to the coast to cause serious problems. Sorry. Antisocial behaviour is a serious problem at the coast, when often large numbers of drunken youths travel down to the coast to cause problems. There have been incidents reported of youth carrying weapons and terrorising people and families who simply come down to enjoy our beautiful coastline and beaches. We have a lot of good TV publicity for our coastline recently, with series like Vera, Robson Green, and the novels of L.J. Ross, the crime writer. We must protect our beautiful areas, our visitors, our residents, and our businesses. I fully support the Northumbrian Police Force in their efforts to prevent antisocial behaviour and congratulate them for the sterling work that they've done to date. Although I do not believe that the barriers and manning of the stations will stop the antisocial behaviour at the coast, it will help reduce the incidents and therefore assist the police in the task to solve this problem, thus making our stations, beaches and coastlines safer for residents, visitors and businesses. I therefore ask all members of the Chamber to support this Conservative notice of objections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Chair. I can give you my assurance I'll not be playing party politics, tennis or anything. I'll just stick to the facts and try and represent, if you want, a case on behalf of the tenants of North Tyneside. I was also quite pleased to find out that 98% of the budget we have in Labour budget has been acknowledged by the Conservative proposal. That probably means that the 2% is hitting the HRA account, so we'll explore that a little bit more. So before I start, Chair, I'm just going to say that I oppose to the notice of objection. And I would like to remind the Chamber that we have already set the HRA budget for next year, and that was done at the Cabinet meeting on the 30th of January. And in doing so, we had to make some very difficult decisions. We all know to manage our housing stock and carry out maintenance and improvements, we have developed a 30-year HRA business plan, and that we update each year, and this is done following consultation with our tenants and carrying out an equalities impact assessment. It's worth remembering that the decisions we make in a single year has an impact across the whole of the 30-year plan. Therefore, it is essential that the approved plan has the right resources to enable us to deliver our key policy priorities, which have also been developed by our tenants, and they include maintaining decency standards across all our housing stock, helping to make our homes as energy efficient and economical to run, building affordable homes, supporting our most vulnerable tenants in these difficult times. The agreed business plan is based on a rent increase for 23-24 of 7%, and that is in line with the government's revised rent policy for this year. The standard government rent policy of CPI plus 1% would have seen an 11% increase. The current national economic climate has meant we've seen costs of delivering services to tenants' homes rise between 11 to 14%. Therefore, even at a 7% rent increase, we have had to plan to make £40 million worth of savings. The Conservative budget asks the Mayor and Cabinet to remove the rent increase, and as I have said earlier, the decisions we make in a single year has an impact across the 30-year plan. By freezing rents, it would have a devastating impact. It would mean removing £235 million of investment from our tenants' homes and the services we provide for them. This would include significantly reducing our debt repayment, and this putting our housing services at risk, removing our new build programme, stop building affordable homes for rent. This is something that we so desperately need. Reducing investment in the repair and maintaining of our housing stock and reducing staffing, and also reducing our ability to support our most vulnerable tenants. This cannot be in the best interest of our people or delivering better services. Acknowledging that a rent increase will be difficult for some of our tenants, we are introducing a package of financial measures linked to tenancy sustainment, totaling of 3 million over a 3-year period. And this is to be focused on the most in need. And this is to recognise the impact of the current cost of living crisis is having on our tenants. Also, during these difficult times, we have still managed to agree a plan which ensures homes remain at the decent home standards by spending a further 28 million in 23-24, with thousands of homes benefiting from a range of improvements, delivering additional solar PV, cavity wall installation, external installations and cladding to our homes.
30 seconds, Councillor Harrison.
Sorry, Chair.
30 seconds.
I shall quickly get through it. So we are delivering a plan which will ensure our 30-year plan. Investment over 30 million building new council homes and supporting our apprenticeships. Our agreeing a 30-year business plan will see over 1.6 billion of investment of council homes of our services, including new dedicated support. Removing the rent increase as proposed by the... I'm just finishing off that. I'll just finish it.
Your time's up. You've had your 5 minutes. Chris Johnson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Rankin very critical of our budget, especially in the fact that it actually resulted in a small monetary increase. I think we might accept that, but what I want to show now is actually that in reality, that may be small, but the benefit overall to residents is really what they actually experience. And let me show you, just in terms of potholes and pavements, because that's an issue that's really important in Tynemouth, I assure you, and elsewhere.
The discussions we've had so far have been around the revenue side of things. I haven't mentioned the capital plan. That's
one at a time.
May I continue? Thank you.
Continue, Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. I'm strongly in favour, obviously, of this Conservative budget. I direct members' attention especially to the £1 million of additional funding that we have allocated to pavement and pothole maintenance. Now, when Councillor Bones and I were elected in May 2021, our first motion actually was to ask this council to match fund the government's contribution for the maintenance of roads and pavements. And obviously, thanks to the usual obfuscation and prevarication by the Labour group, our motion was rejected. I can remember it well, and well, we're not going into it too deeply. Now, over the last 2 years, many residents in Tynemouth Ward alone have fallen because of these poor pavement maintenance, because of the poor pavement maintenance. And they've been injured, and some of them very, very seriously. I've got 3 residents who have legal claims against the council, and in fact, one has been successful last week. And her claim for months of dental treatment will cost North Tyneside Council dearly, I assure you. Now, do not be misled by Labour's claim on social media this afternoon that they're investing an additional £2 million on, quote, fixing roads, pavements and potholes. In reality, there's a council contribution of 3.2 million, a government contribution of 2.5 million, and in our budget, over and above that, there is an additional 1 million. And as I've stated, this Labour administration contribution in the past has proved inadequate. We were knocked back 2 years ago, and look at all the accidents and injuries that have taken place in the interim. Okay. Our additional million is an absolute necessity if we are, as we say we are, genuinely concerned about our residents' safety and genuinely concerned about their well-being. And I suspect that might be lip service if we don't go along with this sort of contribution and not mealy-mouthed about the 3 or 4 pence that supposedly is not going to be, or is going to be deducted from Band D. This is the real thing that we should be looking at, please. I strongly support this Conservative budget, and I think you should look at yourselves and think whether you should as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It'll not come as any surprise to me, and I will not be supporting this objection from the Conservative group tonight. It is good to see the Conservative Party opposite are now grounded in reality. After years of misleading members of the public saying we had millions of pounds in usable reserves, after years of saying we didn't need to put the council tax up, the penny has finally dropped. Your government tells us to put council tax up. And what does Councillor Bones and I know Councillor Bones is very new, and of course there's now more Conservative members that were in power the last time the Tories ran this council in the Independent group than there is the Conservative group. So I know that it's difficult for them potentially to put together a proper budget, but this budget is designed solely for Councillor Bones' leaflets and social media posts. What it does is takes off 12 pence a week off the average household bill, but to do that takes £362,000 from the poorest people in this borough. Councillor Bones also has talked about bins a lot, the 100 new bins, and he's misquoted the Labour Party often, because what we said during that meeting was we will look at it in the budget setting process. You can't just make spend decisions in year when you're in a deficit. I know you have no experience running the council and hopefully never will. But you can't just make spending decisions in year when you have a deficit. You have to consider them in the round with the budget setting process. It is absolutely remarkable, Chair, that after a whole election cycle last year of the Conservative Party putting out fake green leaflets around the borough, they are taking £1 million out of climate emergency spending. I guess that tactic didn't work now, so Councillor Bones has threw that one in the bin and we'll go for a different misleading tactic next year, Chair. £362,000 from the poorest people in this borough. Margaret Thatcher was known as the milk snatcher. Will Councillor Bones be known as the coat snatcher in future, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor John. Excuse me. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. We will support this notice of objection, containing as it does many items which I have myself proposed at budget setting time over the last decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed at the laughing and jeering that came from the other side when Councillor Bones was accused of only managing to save £400,000 from our residents, and I think that just demonstrates the utter contempt with which the party opposite view the money raised by the residents who they're supposed to represent.
Councillor Scargill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to see that after much pushback, Labour have finally realised that my proposal for 100 new bins and a reversal of the no new bin policy is the right decision. Unfortunately for residents, we've had to suffer for over a decade of Labour bringing our area down to get to this point. Perhaps the litter problem has finally hit Whitley Bay. But 100 new bins is only the first step. We need to do more to tackle litter and dog mess. That's why our budget includes giving more people the ability to give out fines. People who litter and leave dog mess bring areas down, and we need an effective deterrent to stop them doing that. I'm also delighted to include a council rent freeze in our budget. Unfortunately, Labour seems to be pulling a scam on those most in need, increasing rent by 3.9 million, giving them £3 million back and telling them to be grateful. This budget delivers what our residents, this objection delivers what our residents want, the people who put us here, and puts an end to this Labour administration's history of council tax hikes and wildly unpopular vanity projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scarlett. Councillor Artley.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, it's 12 months since we had the last meeting, and obviously at that point we were all talking about how Putin's war began in Ukraine, and I don't think any of us here thought or even expected just how poor how things had become. And I think it's been, the living pressures for everybody right across the world, let alone in North Tyneside, has become an awful issue for us all. I support the objection, and clearly the Mayor and Cabinet are to be congratulated that the proposals continue to take forward a programme of regeneration in the borough, which in actual fact has been going on here in the borough for more than 2 decades. So I think people should think about that. Across the political divide, we share the same aspirations, and this should be a borough which all of our children have the best start in life, and that the key to their achievement will be outstanding education, and I think we've started that over the last 2 decades. Under Conservative and Labour administrations, this has been successfully delivered. Let us hope that the new devolution deal will be able to help the region pick up pace on the skills agenda, and that the Mayor and the Combined Authority will be able to win greater levels of investment in this key, which only help and raise aspirations and attainment for the young of our borough. I'm pleased that there will be additional investment, and I know people will laugh or whatever, but at the end of the day, we're putting £1 million in for improvements to roads and pavements, and that has been a huge issue for all. And, the budget papers rightly identify the resident satisfaction in this area remains low. Well, clearly, we have to do something about it. Looking at it is great, but doing something is a very different matter. The great divide that always exists between us is on the level of council tax and any proposed increase on an annual basis. I read in here in this chamber, and it's a big disappointment, and though through the pages of the press, that the administration say the current Chancellor of the Exchequer expects an increase in council tax to up to 5%. However, this remains a choice for each local authority in the land. It's not an order, it's something that we would have to see and do. And if we can't do that, I think we're in a bit of a position. And when you look at other authorities like the Midlands, where Conservative-run councils are restricting their council tax increase to 2.99 in recognition of ongoing costs of living, crisis. The reality is that the Chancellor and the government have given local authorities the ability to raise the council tax up by 5%. It remains a political choice, and that's what people seem to have forgotten. I think that the budget which is being put forward by the Conservative Party is well-meaning. The changes just in the cycle path along in New York is an excellent idea. Great to have the cycle path, but
we have
at the
1
end
minute
of the
left,
day,
Councillor Artley.
we have no one who is actually carrying out any maintenance. With that, I will say thank you, and that I will be supporting the Conservative group.
Point of order, Chair. I didn't get a
Thank
chance
you,
to come in before Councillor Outley spoke, and I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Outley speaking. Councillor Scargill, in his last speech, misled the Council by saying the Council has no new bin policy. Councillor Scargill has been told many times in this chamber and by the Director of Environment that we don't have a no new bin policy, Chair. Will he withdraw the remark?
I now invite Councillor Rankin to exercise the right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. The budget that we're putting forward tonight is one which is balanced, which is fair, and one that meets the challenges that our area faces whilst protecting the most financially vulnerable in North Tyneside. I think it's a shame that the party opposite talks about holding residents in contempt when we've held a mirror up tonight around the language they use around easing the council tax burden and the statements they've made in the past, and the fact that what they're doing is effectively offering residents a 12 pence council tax discount on what Labour's proposals are. If you want to talk about holding residents in contempt, it's putting things like that through residents' doors. Telling them that there's 90 odd £million worth of reserves.
Point of order, Chair.
And then
Chair, point of order.
And then when you come to actually having to set a budget.
Just a second, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Bartoli.
I didn't accuse the Labour Party of holding the residents in contempt. I accused them of holding the money that they raised in contempt, just for clarification.
The facts remain the same, unfortunately. For years now, the party opposite has used literature like this, leaflets like that, telling residents there was 90 odd £million worth of reserves. This is from last year, but we're still going through in this cycle. But then when it comes to it, and they actually have to try and set a budget which is responsible, then last year they walked into the chamber, we had the unedifying spectacle of them putting up council tax by the same 2.99% the government expected, and then sitting in the chamber and trying to pretend that they hadn't. And then this time round, they're using language such as ease the council tax burden, and yet it is 12 pence. And as I say, your own deputy chair of the Conservative Party thinks it's 30 pence for a wholesome meal. So what does that do to people in bands A and B? Especially when you've taken the money from a poverty intervention fund, and that is an absolute fact. As I've said, this has been the most difficult budget probably in decades, and that is a common thought across all local authorities. The government yet again has in part passed the buck from the point of view of council tax rises, but what we have set is an ambitious budget for growth in North Tyneside, which protects the future of the borough and protects our most vulnerable. And I would like to thank all of the officers involved, Paul, John, Claire, and every other officer that has had input into what has been a titanic effort to get this budget balanced for this year and to set us on a course for financial prudency for the future. Can I ask to go to the vote, please, Chair?
There will now be a recorded named vote on the Conservative Group's objection. The vote will be on the basis of a simple majority. Mr Barton, can you please conduct the named vote on the objection?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as the Chair's just indicated, this is a vote on the objection from the Conservative Group to Cabinet's proposed budget. Can members, when their name is called, please indicate a vote for or against the objection, or if they are abstaining. Councillor Linda Arkley. Councillor Ken Berry. Councillor Lewis Bartoli. Councillor Gary Bell. Councillor Liam Bones. Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Carol Burdis. Councillor Debbie Cox. Councillor Naomi Craven. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Kath Davis. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor David Drummond. Councillor Peter Early.
Against.
Councillor Lisa Ferrison. Councillor Michelle Fox.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Margaret Hall. Councillor Tracy Hallway. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor John Hunter. Sorry, not here. Councillor Val Jameson. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Hannah Johnston. Councillor Christopher Johnston. Councillor Joe Kerwin. Councillor Frank Lott. Councillor Wendy Lott. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Louise Marshall. Councillor Pamela McIntyre. Councillor Jim Montague. Councillor Josephine Mudzingwa. Councillor Thomas Mulvenna, Councillor Martin Murphy, Councillor Tricia Niera, Councillor Andy Newman, Councillor Pat Oliver, Councillor John O'Shea, Councillor Alan Percy, not yet, Councillor Stephen Phillips, Councillor Bruce Pickard, Councillor Martin Rankin, Dame Norma Redfern, elected Mayor, Councillor Willie Samuel, Councillor Ollie Scargill, Councillor Jane Shaw, Councillor Matthew Thurloway, Councillor Joan Walker, Councillor Judith Wallace, Councillor George Westwater, and Councillor Matt Wilson.
Votes for, 9. Votes against, 42. Abstentions, none. So the motion defeated. The objection is defeated, so I will now invite members to speak on the substantive motion, that is the Cabinet's proposals, for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. North Tyneside is an ambitious borough with a track record of listening to its residents as to their priorities and wishes to improve their lives and those of their family and friends. I'm so pleased we're able to keep our libraries and leisure centres open and also our culture office open to the borough and wider. Many authorities have closed these much valued facilities that are so important to our residents and for their well-being and health. Footfall is down in libraries but recovering, and with residents finding new ways of engaging with us, we are looking at a new community hub strategy to use these buildings well for our communities. Over 6,000 people have come to our warm welcome hubs since they started, and we plan to continue these to help a feeling of well-being, to assist with the conservative cost of living crisis, and use our buildings wisely to help social isolation. Inflation and the cost of fuel hits our services very hard. We are determined to do all we can to keep our buildings open and ours. Killingworth Library has been refurbished, and there are plans for Forest Hall. Our streets and award-winning blue and green spaces are so important to this feeling of living in a good place and sense of pride in our areas. That's why I'm so proud of all our workers who do their very best every day to make our area look the best it possibly can. Keep our streets, parks and beaches clean and litter-free. Of course, we cannot do all of this alone and have some great residents and groups who volunteer of their time to help us, and we are grateful to them all. We employ seasonal workers to have additional resource to refocus on environmental maintenance across our borough. So as well as seasonal beach wardens, environmental wardens, a statutory dog warden and community protection officers, and 175 new bins installed across the borough in areas of high footfall. And as Councillor Johnson has said, we plan to place a further 100 bins where they are needed and meet our criteria for new public bins. There has never ever been a no new bin policy, and I know Councillor Scargill has been told this several times by officers, but he keeps telling this untruth. We are able to invest in more and new resources by prudent budgeting, to keep our places clean and also issue fixed penalty notices if people are caught, but also try to educate and guide people to do the right thing for us all. We attend school assemblies and letter drop residents and businesses to remind people how to store their waste. We have retrofitted grass cutting machines to enable weed bed removal and detritus, and ordered some new machinery to mechanically sweep paths. We have seasonal teams to help with grounds maintenance, leaf litter and the like, and continue to strive to be a clean and tidy borough. We continue to do more with less by working smarter. We drive recycling messages and have introduced glass banks to help stop contamination. We look forward to food waste collection and the deposit return scheme guidelines being brought forward by government. And we continue to collect garden waste for free from 37,000 homes. We collect waste from 103,000 properties, which is 5.2 million collections per year. We will continue to change our fleet of 407 vehicles over time to electric vehicles and have covered Killingworth with solar panels with battery storage to follow to service both the building and the fleet. We are investing in sports centres and look forward to a new multi-million-pound facility at St Peter's and refurbishing our tennis courts. Also decarbonising our 4 big leisure centres to reduce gas use and refurbishing gyms and facilities. Additional funding to improve play sites right across the borough through Section 106 funding is really important to our residents and young people to provide good quality play.
1 minute.
We continue to support residents with the installation of our low carbon heating and continue to review our carbon net zero plan. We plough on with more plans for safe walking and cycling, and there will be room for cars operating 2 ways on the seafront and have the cycleway, despite scare stories on social media to the contrary, and will be totally funded by Active Travel England, which is part of the Department of Transport. These funds cannot be used for anything else, and not a penny of residents' council tax will be used. This also goes for Rake Lane roundabout and cycleway, but why let the truth get in the way of a good Tory story of misleading stories and smoke and mirrors? I'm amazed the Conservative would think of taking 1 million out of our climate change fund, given the scientific evidence for climate change. And I can categorically say there are no Dutch-style roundabouts planned for the Broadway, Councillor Bortoli.
And Councillor Graham,
Read my
sorry.
lips. I support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Bone?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, there we have it. Councillor Graham has just outlined how this Labour budget puts pursuing net zero nearly 20 years ahead of the government target at a cost of millions to the authority, ahead of keeping council tax low for residents and delivering better services. In this chamber previously, Councillor Graham has admitted that bringing net zero forward, as this Labour group intends to do, bringing the net zero target forward, is unfunded and as of yet does not have government funding. Now, the reason it doesn't yet have government funding is because we are going 20 years ahead of schedule. And I think if we put that to a vote of our residents would rather we had better services now and focused on net zero when the technology was there by 2050. Councillor Graham also touched on the, quote, untruths and then that this money couldn't be used for anything else apart from cycle paths. Well, Councillor Graham knows that this is a lie. Councillor Graham has sat there previously.
Councillor Bones, I do not want to hear the word lie in this chamber. Would you like to change the word?
She said lie to me? No, Councillor Graham used the word lie to Councillor Scargill in her previous speech.
Untrue. Can you say that?
Untrue. It is absolutely untrue that the money couldn't be used for anything else. The money could be used for whatever the council chose to bid on. And Councillor Graham knows full well that the council chose to bid for a cycle path on Rake Lane and a Dutch-style roundabout, which has had 7 accidents in 7 months. And Councillor Graham knows fine well that also the seafront cycle path, they are choosing to bid for that money. That money the bids could be for anything regarding active travel. They could be to bring the wagonways up to scratch so they can be used as cycleways. But instead, Councillor Graham is using the money to further these vanity projects while, as our objection outlined, failing to have a maintenance plan in place, no gritters, no leaf clearers, so when it snows, the cyclists have to cycle on the roads, which are already narrowed because of the cycle paths. I mean, it's a shame that this Labour proposal goes out of its way to protect luxuries like the chauffeur-driven car, their own expenses, and hundreds of thousands of pounds in allowances. This budget could have been a real opportunity to get our borough back on track after a decade of neglect and put our residents first. It's clear that this Labour budget is pay more, get less, and we won't be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. We can't support this budget. I wish to highlight a couple of areas of concern, in addition, of course, to the numerous ways of saving money which have been discussed. The first area I'd like to highlight is the underestimate of the resources which are available to the Council. When calculating the council tax base, attention is paid to the likely number of new homes. With the exception of the pandemic, that figure for new building has been significantly underestimated every year. For example, in 27-18, the actual increase was 854, with an estimate of 206. In 21-22, it was estimated 250, the actual figure was 482. The pattern is the same. I appreciate that once planning permission is granted, building can take some time and isn't always guaranteed, so it's wise to be prudent, but there's quite a difference between prudence and it being divorced from reality. The net effect of these regular underestimates is that higher bills are imposed upon our residents. The second area I'd like to highlight is the use of resources. Reference has been made to the level of reserves, and I believe that the Council could manage its resources better. Currently, amongst the reserves, the Council holds £13.6 million of Section 106 money, some of which has been in the Council's coffers for many, many years. This means that residents are being deprived of improvements for which developers have paid, for example, for parks, for play sites, for education, ecology, coastal management and the like. For play sites, for example, there's around £1 million uncommitted in Section 106 money, and yet many of our play sites are extremely run down. In some cases, shockingly, the end dates in the Section 106 agreements have actually passed, so the developers would be entitled to demand the return of that money from the Council. Again, it would deprive our residents of improvements. So I therefore urge that the administration manages its existing resources properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? I now invite Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think in supporting the motion, it's important to remember that year on year we have faced cuts to our budgets and cuts to our services, but we've actually been able to deliver services to our communities out there, even through the pandemic, providing services and support to our communities. This budget is a further of that investment that we see to the good folk of North Tyneside. It's not only an investment into our schools and helping our children with better education, it's an investment also in supporting our most vulnerable members of our community, which at the present moment do need that support. But it's also a budget about giving us hope and choice. And that choice for the future is ensuring that we do build those homes, we do protect the environment that we live in, and we ensure the roads and the pavements are clean, and we ensure that we do all the things that's important to the good folk of North Tyneside. Because one thing we need to remember is in putting this budget together, the Mayor consulted, the Cabinet consulted, not only with the councillors themselves through the processes, but also the good community out there in North Tyneside. So the majority of priorities that you see in that budget are not, if you want to say, the vanity projects. They're the projects or the things that will actually help and support all the communities of North Tyneside. So whether that's a regeneration in the Wallsend area, or whether it's regeneration in the northwest area of North Tyneside, or whether it's investing into bringing jobs into North Tyneside, or as I say, making the streets safer in North Tyneside. This budget is about taking North Tyneside forward. It's about making sure we invest in our communities, and it's about making sure this borough is a cleaner, safer, and a better place to live. And I would be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? I now invite Councillor Rankin to exercise his right of reply, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It won't take that long. Just in relation to allowances, there's a report that comes through this chamber every year, which is from an independent review of council's allowances. Every single year, well, in the last 2 years, the Conservatives have voted for a 2% rise, and this year they backed Labour's stance on a freeze. So quite how will you continue to play politics with it at budget time? I scratch my head because you have the opportunity in that meeting to make a recommendation to the Chamber that can be referred back to for an independent review, and you've never chosen to do that. In relation to the council tax base, if there's more properties built than are expected within that calculation, it gets fed back into the council collection fund surplus, which is detailed in the report. I think it's 1.623, so you can see that in there. And in relation to Section 106 money, in a number of occasions, I think the number that you quoted, Councillor Wallace, unfortunately, that isn't necessarily what is actually held at the time. So, for instance, that can include money that is under discussion, and also, as you will be aware, as a former Cabinet Member for Finance, Section 106 money, number one, cannot be used to look to freeze council tax. Number two, in most cases, it tends to be more on capital spend than revenue. And number three, it is also a legal agreement, and so it is only released in line with the triggers and the satisfaction with the build, etc., etc. We've detailed tonight that we have put together a budget which retains social fairness at its heart in what has been the most difficult of circumstances. It isn't wrong to say that the economy is in a far worse place because of Liz Truss in any way, shape or form. That's an accepted fact. But if you don't want to believe me as someone who you've classed, was a banker from Shimo, I think someone said, who works for the Kremlin, then why don't you speak to all the city fund managers who also think that it was a really, really bad move? Most people wish Liz Truss had not been Prime Minister. And I think that the ramifications of that, from the point of view of withdrawal of mortgage products and interest rates shooting up far faster than was ever expected at the beginning of the year, is testimony to that. This budget is a budget of growth. It's a budget of fairness. Can we go to the vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I will now take a recorded named vote on the substantive motion. The vote will be on the basis of a simple majority. Mr Barston, can you please conduct the named vote over the Cabinet's proposals?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just to be clear, this is a vote on the substantive motion, which is Cabinet's proposed budget. So can members please indicate a vote for or against the proposed budget, or if they're abstaining, when their name is called. Councillor Linda Arkley. Councillor Ken Barry. Councillor Lewis Bartoli. Councillor Gary Bell. Councillor Liam Bones. Councillor Brian Burtis. Councillor Carol Burtis. Councillor Debbie Cox. Councillor Naomi Craven. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Kath Davis. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor David Drummond. Councillor Peter Earley. Councillor Lisa Ferrison. Councillor Michelle Fox.
For.
Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Margaret Hall. Councillor Tracy Hallway. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor Val Jameson. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Hannah Johnson. Councillor Christopher Johnston. Councillor Joe Kerwin. Councillor Frank Lodd. Councillor Wendy Lodd. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Louise Marshall. Councillor Pamela McIntyre. Councillor Jim Montague. Councillor Josephine Mudzingwa. Councillor Thomas Mulvena. Councillor Martin Murphy. Councillor Tricia Niera. Councillor Andy Newman. Councillor Pat Oliver. Councillor John O'Shea. Councillor Stephen Phillips. Councillor Bruce Pickard. Councillor Martin Rankin. Dame Norma Redfern, elected Mayor. Councillor Willie Samuel. Councillor Ollie Scargill. Councillor Jane Shaw. Councillor Matthew Thurlaway. Councillor Joan Walker. Councillor Judith Wallace. Councillor George Westwater. And Councillor Matt Wilson.
Thank you. There were 44 votes for, 42 votes for, sorry, 3 votes against and 6 abstentions. And therefore, As the budget and council tax has now been approved, the council meeting provisionally scheduled for 2nd of March will no longer be required. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting, and thank you for your attendance.